Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Jesus' words create a polarity in my mind between divine things and human things, or in some translations, heavenly things and earthly things. Now it's very clear which of these two things are better. Obviously, it's divine things. The human things are associated with Satan, the ultimate bad thing. Whereas divine things are associated, of course, with God, with Jesus. Now, the human brain does an interesting thing with polarities. I think about a polarity as like a distinction drawn to make things more clear, like polarized sunglasses, which we might put on in order to see through haze. But it's easy for polarities to get out of hand because the human brain does things with distinctions that, rather than treating them like a useful tool in a certain situation, we magnify them into sort of eternally separate things. So we have the box of heavenly things, and we have the box of earthly things. And which box do you want to be in? Which box am I in? And then, besides exaggerating the difference and making it into sort of an eternal, permanent distinction, we start associating other things with it. I read this sentence about divine things and human things, and my mind associates it with another distinction between spiritual and material. Perhaps we associate it with the distinction that Paul makes in the epistle between faith and law. And I want to be in the good box. And so I think of myself as spiritual rather than as material. I think of myself as having faith rather than being mired in the law. And the next thing I know, I have crept down the road to that anti-Judaism which has infected our church, or to thinking as Christians have in the past, that somehow my spiritual self is different from my material self, and I can be good and blessed without regard to what I do in these sordid material areas like, say, money or property, or how I treat other people. Presiding Bishop Curry told us that a bishop of the Church of England managed to use this distinction between the spiritual and the material to justify baptizing slaves while leaving them slaves, because they were spiritually free, even though materially they were not. You see how seductive these polarities can be. If I stop at just this sentence of Jesus's about divine things and human things, if I ignore the rest of his passage, that very awkward passage about, if anyone to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. And if I ignore the first part, the part that in fact Peter had a problem with, about the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected and be killed. There is nothing less spiritual than crucifixion. It is painful. It is shameful. It is nasty and messy. And yet, somehow everything is turned upside down, because this divine Jesus, with the insight into that which is heavenly, is saying, this is what's going to happen. He's saying, we too have to take up our crosses and follow him into the human politics, into being rejected, into being shamed, into pain and suffering, and all of the messy materiality of human life. But yet, this is in fact good news, because, truth be told, I know I'm not a purely spiritual being. I know actually I'm an animal. There is no spirit separate from this imperfect body. There is, in fact, no true self separate from the messiness of human cultural and social life. And so, if I try to deceive myself and think that I am supposed to be purely spiritual, I know that I fall short. Particularly at this time when so many of us are suffering from depression, which polarizes things even more, which lies to us and tells us that if we are not perfect, then we are worthless. Particularly at this time when, as a church and a people, we are having to confront the results of our sinfulness with respect to race, slavery, economic inequality. A faith which just said, be heavenly instead of earthly, would not actually do us very much good. Instead, what we have is a faith in the one who tells us that when we are weakest, we are most beloved. And when we are shamed, we share with Jesus, being closest to God. And when we fail, when we recognize that we have failed, we are the ones standing at the foot of the cross and looking to that cross for redemption.